Hiya, Georgie. Oh, they all float down here. I take my work very seriously. What's happening, my fellow geeks and geekettes? Welcome to a brand new episode of Cosplay Chris. And today, I'm going to be showing you guys how we're going to be making a wall display featuring a beautiful Tim Curry Pennywise face casting and eye inserts from the extremely talented Oliver Schwartz. Now, I have previously mentioned Oliver's amazing work in previous videos with his Tweety Bird resin kit and also his Robert Pattinson eyes as well. But what he included in the package amongst the Robert Pattinson eyes was some beautiful demonic Pennywise eyes and this sculpt of Pennywise that he had sculpted by hand utilizing an actual life cast of the man himself, Tim Curry. So we're going to be utilizing some clear embedding resin today, and we're going to be making a wall mountable display featuring this wig. This is a Ruby's mass-produced Pennywise wig. Obviously, we're not going to be using this part here. I'm just utilizing the hair because it's pretty much a bang-on match. It just needs a bit of futzing and a bit of teasing, but apart from that, it is the perfect look. So the first step is we're going to be painting the face casting. This is cast in resin, and I've just got the eyes taped in the back. I already went ahead and dremeled them out and filed out the eye sockets just to make sure they all fit perfectly, and I really love the look with the demonic eyes. Granted, for the most part of the mini-series, you see Tim Curry's natural blue eyes, but the red is just so striking. So we're going to be utilizing a flat white primer for the base color and base coat. And the good thing is it also acts as a primer. And then obviously we're going to go in and do the eyebrows, the red nose, and the red lips with the black outline around it. And then we can move on to mounting it on the base. Now for the base, we're actually going to be using a photo frame. This is from IKEA, but we're not going to be mounting it like this. We're going to be mounting it like this. So I'm also going to be incorporating some rivets around here and make it look like a sewerage grate / sewerage drain or part of a sewerage system. Make it all rusty and gnarly and disgusting. Now we're limited with space, so the idea is I want this to appear like Pennywise is emerging out of the water and all his hair is manky, wet, and kind of soaked. So I'm very excited about that because I've been wanting to use clear casting embedding resin on a big project like this for quite some time. Obviously, I've used it recently on the Batman and also the Hellraiser puzzle box, but that was only a little pool. But now that you can get the dyes from Bunnings Warehouse for this clear embedding resin, it just makes life so much more easier, and it opens up a variety of projects to do. So before we get to anything in terms of the base / wall mounting base, we're gonna paint this guy. Now I've given him a bath in isopropyl alcohol just to wash off the dust from carving and dremeling out his eyes, but we're gonna be using a flat white primer from Rust-Oleum. So with that being said, let's get to it. Alrighty, it is now time to do the clown makeup. So I've gone ahead and mapped out where exactly I want to do the eyebrows. We've got the blue triangles here above his eyes, and we also have the mouth makeup. As you can see, I just went over the areas with a pencil, because that way if you do mess it up, you can just get your eraser and erase it out and fix it all up. So pretty happy overall. Now, the eyebrows that I notice on Tim Curry's makeup do vary depending on his expressions. I want this kind of neutral, sad clown look, and also with the mouth, because most times out of 10 when you look at reference, it's Tim Curry pulling an expression as opposed to a neutral mouth. But when it is kind of a neutral expression, it just has this sad kind of taper out. So we're going to be using a stark black, and for that I'm just going to be using this Bic permanent marker. Pretty simple, just to do the eyebrows and color them in until they're a nice full black. And then I've got some crafty color here, just a student gloss acrylic sky blue for the blue triangles above his eyes. Now when it comes to the red nose, I've got a brighter red. Again, just a student acrylic, but when it comes to the lips, I've got a deeper red. From what I can see, there's a much deeper red going on there with Tim Curry's makeup. And then go back in with this Bic permanent marker, the fine point marker, and do the black outline around the red lips. Now amongst doing that, I'm also going to grab this hot pink pearl from Model Masters. This is an acrylic paint, and do the little fleshy bits around his eyes and the corners of his eyes, just, you know, those pink parts of your eyes, and it's just going to make for much more realism when we put the eyes in. I figured it'd also give you guys a close-up of Oliver's beautiful eye work. These things are absolutely brilliant, and I just love the way they look. They just rest in there so perfectly. And even though, like I said, most times in the mini-series you see Tim Curry's natural blue, these eyes are just so cool, and it's just so much more demonic and devilish. Also very reminiscent of Bill Skarsgård's contact lenses. So what I'm actually going to do first are the fleshy portions of his eyes with the hot pink pearl, and then we're going to go in and do the rest of the clown makeup. Once that's done, I'm going to seal this up with a matte sealer just to make sure all the acrylics are sealed in, and then go back in with the Liquitex gloss medium just for the lips and the eyebrows, etc. That way it'll just highlight everything. I am going to keep the nose a matte, but I do want the lips especially nice and glossy, because they're lips, you know, they're fresh lips. You lick your lips and they stay glossy.
It's time for some shitty commentary and to float.
So you can see here, I'm just going in around the perimeters of the eyes, doing those fleshy parts, most notably in the corners, the inner corners, and I feel by doing this, once you add the eyes in, it just gives it so much more life. Now I do go around the eyebrows with the permanent marker just as an outline and then color it in, and funnily enough it just works so well. There wasn't need for multiple layers. It went on perfectly in just one pass. Now also I'm using a very sharp square edge brush for those blue triangles on the top of his eyes. Now when it came to the nose, I had to do a good 3 coats. As you can see there, it's pretty streaky with the first coat, but after 3 it was a nice dark red, as you see right there. And what I love about the deep red, and you'll see it in this shot here, it looks like actual makeup on lips, just the way it's so pronounced and that detail was there. Now once all that was done, I just grabbed a nice matte lacquer and just sealed it all up, and it's just going to help for when we go back in with the gloss, the Liquitex acrylic gloss for those lips, and again just adds more dimension and depth to the face sculpt. Alrighty, I am so stoked with how this is looking so far, Geeks and Geekettes. Like, Oliver has just done an incredible job, not only with the sculpt, but with the eyes. So I've got the eyes held in place with some tape just at the back, just to position everything, just make sure everything lines up, and then we're just gonna grab some cheap and nasty super glue. And this is just essentially to get the basic hold in place. Make sure everything's lined up. That looks pretty good to me. And just a couple of drops around here just to get the basic hold on the eyes. There is one more detail that I actually totally forgot until this very second. His eyeliner and tiny little eye drop down here, like a little black eye drop. So I'm just gonna grab my Sharpie and do that now, and then we can call it a day on the makeup and the eyes being set in place. Alrighty, it is now time to move on to the base. So to prep this, I just gave it a very light sand with a very high grit sandpaper. Nothing too low, because I don't want to actually disturb the surface of it, but this is just going to help break everything up and help with the primer. Now I went along every 2 centimeters and marked a dot where I was going to make my drill holes for the rivets. And the rivets that I'm actually going to be using are just very standard nickel plated rapid rivets. I got these from a junk shop years ago in bulk. You can get them from leather supply stores and stuff like that, and mostly used for Freddy gloves, but in this case this size wasn't for Freddy gloves, unfortunately, but they've been hanging around and now they're finally coming in good use. And I'm just using some cheap and nasty super glue and quickly putting them in bit by bit. Now I didn't do it all in one hit. Obviously you see that I'm doing it in sections, and gave it about a good half an hour to dry for that glue to properly set. And then we're just going to grab our flat grey primer and start to prime this piece. Now you want to make sure you cover everything with the grey, because the grey is also going to act as our base color essentially for a sewage looking diorama. And I also grabbed the MDF board that came with the frame and primed it too. You don't really have to with what we're going to be doing to it, but it just kind of helps. Now, in terms of the weathering process, just grabbing some black kiwi shoe polish, not watering it down, and covering the entire frame with it. And if you're in a hot climate, you probably want to act quick because the shoe polish can sometimes dry pretty quick, but we're just going to dab away the excess there and try and make it as organic and as soiled as possible. Like, this is just a roughed up grate. Now I'm just going to grab some burnt sienna acrylic paint and mix it with a white acrylic paint, and this is going to be our emulating rust. So, you know, especially around the rivets and stuff like that, we're going to mix it up. We're not going to water it down this time because I really want the rust to stand out. Much like the shoe polish method, we're just going to dab away the excess, but you have to do it in little increments because this acrylic paint can dry quite quick. You got to act quick, and also make sure you're telling a story with the rust, and make sure like some of the rivets are overly exposed and some rivets have rust still on them. Just make it very sporadic that way. That's what I feel works best overall. And you can see there, that's a pretty effective rust effect we've got going on there, and just simple and effective. Now it's time to move on to painting the backboard that the resin is going to be pooling into. So we're going to be using a dark blue, a light blue, and a white. So we're obviously just going to streak on the dark blue first, and this is what I'm going for, streaks across the board itself. And once the dark blue dried, I grabbed the lighter blue, and at this point I'm not covering the entire piece. I'm just going little bits at a time and almost making it look like waves or just floating water and stuff like that. And then once the lighter blue was dry, I then grabbed the white and just like really just finely whisked it across, just so all three colors complement each other. And it's just going to help once the resin pools and just help with the effect of water. Now it's time to seal all of the pieces up with a hot glue gun. It's essentially like sealing up your tiles in the bathroom so there's no leakage, so no resin will leak through to the bottom, because that's the last thing we want. So we've got three pieces we're gluing. We've got the inner structure, we've got the actual plastic front part of the frame, and then we also have the board that we just painted, the MDF board. And we're just gonna set everything in place. We're gonna set those little metal pegs down and then do a final pass with the hot glue gun on the back of the frame, and then we are all sealed in, so no resin, no clear embedding resin whatsoever can leak out and cause a bit of a problem. Alrighty, we are on the home stretch with this project, Geeks and Geekettes. I'm so happy with how he's turning out so far, and obviously the credit goes to Oliver and his beautiful sculpt and his beautiful eyes. So what I've done is removed the wig from the actual cap that came on the whole set. So here's the original label. I paid 45 Australian dollars for this thing. Just threaded off the skull cap that it came on. Now there was a bit of brushing involved to kind of get that nice fantail that Pennywise has with his hair, and also just to thin out the hair. There was a lot of hair going on here. So what we're going to be doing now, get rid of that thread there, is securing the resin casting in place. So we're going to be anchoring it on both ends here, thus locking the hair in before we pour in our embedding resin. Nothing too high tech, we're just going to be using some cheap and nasty super glue, again just to anchor the actual face casting down. I'm pretty happy with the placement of the hair. We're going to be probably pouring the resin in stages, you know, pooling it to see what it looks like when it gets to here and what it does to the hair itself. But before any of that, let's just anchor this bad boy down. Let's make sure it is nice and center. I am pretty happy with that. Now I'm probably gonna have to hold this down for a little bit because there is so much hair, and you're not even gonna notice the glue at all by the time the resin's all pooled around it. And just at the bottom of the neck here. Home stretch, Geeks and Geekettes. We've got our Pro-Tite clear embedding resin, we have our blue dye, we have the catalyst hardener, and we also have a disposable clear bucket and a mixing stick with those holes in it, which just make so much more easier for mixing stuff up like this. So that was a spare tin I had left, and then this was the full tin that I just poured the entire thing into, which I'm glad I did because it was the right amount of resin for this project. Now you can see I only need 3 drops of that blue dye because a little goes a long way. I want the resin to be blue, but also translucent, so we can see through to the painting with the three colors, the dark blue, the light blue, and the white that it did on the actual backing board. So after that, we're just going to add in our catalyst, and I dumped the whole thing in there. You're supposed to measure it out, but I've done enough resin pours before that you just dump the whole thing in, and it just means you just got to work quicker. That's all. So you have to do this in increments because you got to let the resin soak into the hair level and then do it again. So obviously I poured it from the bottom and the top, but you see there it sinks in while it soaks into the hair. And this is the look I was going for. Like the hair, some parts of the hair are still dry, like as if he's about to submerge himself underwater. Now, the piece de resistance is I'm going to have an LED strip at the bottom of the frame to illuminate up. Just give that creepy look like what you have with a flashlight when you're telling a ghost story. And this was a $16 kit from Bunnings Warehouse with a self-contained battery pack. And obviously we've got our wall hanging set there with our wire. So I'm not going to be using like a cord. I'm using a wire because this is quite a heavy piece now after adding that resin. And the resin does take about a good 24 hours to dry, and keeping it in UV light really speeds up the process. But after tying the wall mount kit on there, I then applied a adhesive strip to the back of the battery pack and hid that under Pennywise's hair. You couldn't see a little bit here and there, but it just makes for easy access when you want to switch it on and off. And then I peeled off the adhesive strip of the actual LED strip and then placed it on the bottom part of the display. And now we're ready for the final reveal. And there we have it, guys. The Pennywise It wall display is done and dusted. A massive thank you to the extremely talented Oliver Schwartz for your amazing face casting and eyes. I probably will have to go back in on Pennywise's left-hand side of his hair and thin out that hair a little. It's just not matching the other side, but for the overall effect, you get a pretty good idea. Now, you could also put the LEDs all the way around. I wanted them on the bottom just to illuminate up. Like I said, much like when you tell a ghost story and hold a flashlight at the bottom of your face. With that being said, wherever you are in the world, please have yourselves an absolute cracker of a day. I hope you're well. Hope you're happy. Be merry, be silly. And until next time, Geeks, please always remember, cosplayers do it best.